No, it
Perfect.
is.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's professional development opportunity brought to you on behalf of the Missouri Association for Workforce Development. My name is Donna Sheets. I am your president of MAUD. Very excited to have today's speaker with us for our topic of balancing leadership and well-being. I'd like to introduce our speaker. Her name is Ophelia Strickland. Ophelia is the founder and senior consultant of A&L Solutions LLC, a training and development agency that helps new and emerging leaders stay aligned and leveraged through training, coaching, and consulting focused on leadership, emotional intelligence, and self-care. So, with over 20 years of experience spanning education, workforce, and government sectors, has empowered youth, young adults, and professionals through transformative learning experiences. Philia is dedicated to helping individuals and organizations achieve their missions with focus, momentum, and impact. And if you were with us last year at the MOD conference, we hosted a pre-conference session. And I apologize for the life of me, I can't remember the title, but Ophelia was the speaker for this pre-conference session. I heard a lot of great things about it. So we're excited to welcome you back, Ophelia. Without further ado, I will turn it over to you for today's presentation on balancing leadership and well-being.
All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much, Donna, Tara, and Maud for inviting me here to talk about this very important topic on balancing leadership and well-being. As she mentioned, I led the pre-conference session at last year's conference, and it was New Dynamic, the Emotionally Intelligent Leader. And so part of what we discussed there was a little bit about well-being, but mostly emotional intelligence. So the goal for our time today over the next 50 minutes or so is really to help you, determine what well-being, self-care, and balancing that means for you. And so it's important to really understand and realize leadership success. It should not come at the cost of burnout. So we'll talk about, burnout, some prevention strategies, and just to kind of tell you a little bit about who I am. I'm born and raised in Arkansas. I am again the senior consultant and founder of A&L Solutions. So I help emerging leaders along their leadership journey. And this is an interactive webinar. I don't know if you've attended any lately, but I always love interaction. So I know some of you may be on your lunch break. Some of you may have volunteered or been voluntold, as I like to say. But either way, I'm glad to have you here today. Um, in the time that I've worked in the professional setting, you know, I always share with people that leadership, it doesn't start with the title. It's more of those characteristics. And so some work that I've done over time is working in higher education, workforce development, and economic development for, I used to say over 15 years, but it's been over 20. I've been in the workforce since 2000, and I haven't missed a beat since. I will talk about some of my journey with burnout that I experienced and my reason for transition and some strategies that I've used. I like to know who's here. So, with this webinar, if you're on a mobile device by chance, you can tap your screen to locate your camera and microphone. If you'd like to show your face, be seen or heard, you'll just want to make sure there's no red line through your audio or your video. So, if you do want to interact in the chat, I will be asking questions and I do encourage your participation. So, I'd like to know who's here. If you could tell me your title and maybe the organization that you're with. And if you have questions, feel free to chime into the chat. I do ask that you remain on mute while we're sharing today, just to block out any background sounds or things, feedback that may come across. So if you could go ahead and let me know who's here, your title and your organization. All right. Let's see.
I'll start.
Yeah,
Good afternoon. My name is Phyllis Selvey, and I am the program support specialist. Okay. So I have a lot of duties. I work with Family and Workforce Centers of America, and I like what I do. And I'm kind of like all over. I do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that. But when you like what you do, it's not so bad, but sometimes it can be a little challenging.
absolutely. Thank you for
I'm in
sharing.
St. Louis, Missouri. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. And then I see Director of Employment Services, Director of Strategic Partnerships. I'm a Workforce Data Team Director. All right. Senior Product Support Specialist, Youth Career Specialist. All right. Thank you all so much for sharing RISE Community Services. Okay. WIOA Adult and Dislocated Worker Lead, EDSI, Special Projects Manager. All right. And there may have been some, and please feel free to continue to share as those come across. Compliance Specialist, Workforce Development Specialist, Business Services Representative, Benefits Program Associate. All right. Thank you all so much for sharing. I always like to know who's here. As best as I can, I'll try to tailor what I talk about maybe to your specific job, but I always like to share my conference or webinar framework. And if you've heard me talk recently, you've heard me share that framework, CAA. So consume, apply, adjust. So during our time together, you can benefit from the information that's shared here, whether it's maybe a great reminder for you or some new concept by consuming the information, applying it where it fits, and then adjusting as you need to. So consume, apply, adjust. You may be the person who's, taking notes. I'm that note taker. You may be the person that likes to listen and kind of consume it that way. Whatever your preferences are, feel free as we go along today. We have set aside up to an hour, so I'll leave time at the end for Q&A if you have any questions or comments. And we'll be talking about the Leadership Wellness Challenge. So, some challenges that you may face, some practical strategies for balance, meeting systems and technology, and then sustainable self care practices. So, with this training, it's a part of a leadership program that I lead, and I talk about my Emerge framework in that leadership program. And as much as I would love to be able to address all of your challenges today, there's only so much time that we have. But if you would like some additional insight after today's webinar, feel free to reach out.
You like what you do.
I will definitely, I don't mind sharing additional information. I'll go ahead and just, if you could, make sure that you're on mute to, again, block out any of those sounds. If you see a red line through your microphone, that means you're on mute. So if you don't see that, that means we can probably hear the conversation that you're having in the background.
And
Oh,
Ophelia, I will do my best to go through and mute if there's any extra background noise going on.
okay. All right. Awesome. So, as I mentioned, over the past 20 years, the roles that I've served in, from my very first job as a lead at the Sonic Drive-In to Director of Workforce and Community Education, and now Senior Consultant, these are some strategies that I've used. I've met so many workforce development professionals and other professionals who have shared their journey, some things that have worked well with them. So, I like to just kind of continue on and ask, how are you showing up today? I'm always very interested in the response to the question that I'm about to ask. Does balance exist? I like to know, does balance exist? If you could go ahead and type in the chat, what do you think? Does balance exist? I've heard, various responses, but I like to know excuse me, what your thoughts are. All right. So let's see. Yes, it can absolutely. Finding it can be challenging. I think so. I believe it takes effort. Yes, but you have to create it. Someone said no. Okay. Hopefully by the end of this, our time together, you'll find some ways to, be intentional. It can, if you're intentional, is another response. Yes, you can create it with planning and sticking to your schedule. Kind of. All right. Challenging. All right. So I always like to share, I feel the balance does exist. Again, it's all of what you've mentioned, being intentional. And it's not going to be 50-50 every day. Some days I'm more depleted than others, and it may be 90-20. Some days it may be 50-50. You'll want to create that for yourself and what that looks like for you and the time that you're in and what you're experiencing. So it can, if you are intentional about that. If we don't balance and if we don't find balance, we will experience burnout. And I like to just say either you have experienced burnout, you are currently experiencing burnout, or you have, you're on the other side of that. You've overcame it. So think about, if you have experienced it, what did you do? How do you know that you're burned out? Those are some things that we're going to talk about today. When several years ago, I found myself being very irritable. I was over it every single day. I dreaded Mondays. Generally, I felt myself on Sunday nights getting sick, and I didn't realize at the time that I was experiencing burnout. And so it happens, it will happen, or it is currently happening. Now, I would be remiss if I did not share some signs of burnout, but I want to ask you first, what are some signs? Let me know in the chat. What are some signs of burnout? Negativity can be a sign. Exhaustion. Yep. Yeah, everything is an irritation, fatigue, tired. It's a lot of great responses coming in. Illness, frustration, being tired, lack of interest, motivation, lack of focus. That's right. Some people are such overachievers that they overlook, hide, or just aren't aware of the signs, the events, the people, the requests that lead to and causes burnout. And so now I will preface this by saying this is not a medical diagnosis or medical advice, but these are some signs that could be an indication of burnout. So chronic exhaustion, feeling physically or emotionally drained, even after rest. You may start the day tired or feel like you have nothing left to give. It'd be a sign of burnout. Reduced motivation or engagement, tasks that once felt very meaningful, it may now feel overwhelming, could feel frustration, pointless even. You may notice a decrease in enthusiasm or commitment, increased irritability or emotional reactivity. So, small issues that begin to feel like major problems. If you find yourself, I'm over it. You may feel more impatient with your colleagues, staff, clients than you usually would. Someone said short and snippy with spouse and family. Yeah. And what we'll talk about today is not just applicable in the workplace, but also outside of the workplace in personal settings. Difficulty concentrating and lower performance. So, burnout often shows up as maybe brain fog, forgetfulness, trouble making decisions. So being indecisive, feeling less effective in your role. Physical symptoms and stress-related health changes. Now, again, It could or could not, but it's possible that it's due to burnout, maybe headaches, muscle tension, stomach issues, changes in sleep, getting sick more often, especially that sick feeling on a Sunday when it's time to return to work on Monday. And more specifically, if you support job seekers, lead a team, maybe in charge of youth programming, community-based initiatives, all of the positions that you mentioned in the chat, compassion fatigue from constant support roles. And so, it can be an emotional weight with working with your clients, knowing that they face barriers such as employment, housing instability. Burnout can show up when you begin to feel maybe emotionally numb or feel detached, maybe less empathetic than usual. And then, feeling overwhelmed by maybe some competing demands of urgency. Everything, right, in your role in your profession is important. In the many environments in the workforce setting, it's driven by outcomes. So enrollment targets, placement numbers, grant compliance, partnerships, participant needs. And so burnout really can emerge when everything feels urgent and there's just no space to breathe or to prioritize. It may cause a decrease in patience with staff or participants. Some leaders may really experience burnout based on that decrease in patience. So if you are a bit snappy, short-tempered, I think I saw some of those responses in the chat. Maybe there's higher turnover. And then, decision fatigue. The amount of decisions that leaders must make can cause burnout. And so I always tell people for every barrier, every challenge, there's a solution. And we'll talk about some of those solutions here in just a moment. But, let's talk about why this matters. There's a cost of burnout and overwhelm. It can, impact leadership presence, reduce creativity. And if you've ever heard that, attitudes are contagious and so is energy. So, teams mirror their leaders' energy oftentimes. And so, how are you showing up? Sometimes productivity declines over time if you're burned out. And we know that leadership isn't just about results, it's also about longevity. So if you're a leader and you feel depleted, your team may suffer. And I like to share, probably about 11 years ago, I led a team during one of the most difficult times in my personal life. If you've ever heard the term fake it till you make it, and as some of the younger generations say, if fake it till I make it was a person, I was that person at the time. I mean, I led a team. I had to show up with a smile, meeting my performance goals in that leadership role. And I had some big responsibilities, not only leading my team, but I had to lead weekly meetings. I had to lead monthly team meetings. I had to meet with stakeholders. I had to facilitate and organize business and industry meetings with industry like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and show up. I had to write and co-write grants that could yield millions of dollars for the organization, all while suffering inside, feeling depleted. I experienced a lot of emotions. I'm human, you're human, and that's just the reality of the world that we live in. And so, I had to really focus on gathering myself. I had to focus on first recognizing that I was burned out, not only from the work that I was doing, but just because of the personal things that were going on in my life. And so if you don't get a hold of it, it will get a hold of you. And some common challenges that leaders face, and you may be able to relate. This may resonate with you. Back-to-back meetings, right? Always having a meeting for a meeting. As I mentioned a moment ago, constant decision making, having to make those decisions, maybe even some tough decisions with budget cuts and uncertainty with funding. Sometimes there are those difficult decisions that you must make. Supporting staff needs. As a leader, that we support the needs of our staff. And sometimes it's their emotional needs and not just work related. And then limited time for reflection or rest. And so, as you know, many of you may spend your days, responding instead of leading proactively. And that's where the stress builds up. So I'd like to know, what is your biggest leadership challenge right now? Is it A, time management, B, meeting overload, C, work-life balance, D, supporting staff while managing expectations? Let's take a moment to see what really resonates most. So if you could type in the chat, what is your biggest leadership challenge right now? All of the above. All right. Thank you for your honesty, D. Okay. Supporting staff while managing expectations. I see a lot of D's. All right. There was another A with the splash of B. So time management and meeting overload. Okay. All right. Supporting staff while managing expectations. Okay. A lot of D's. C, work-life balance. All right. Thank you for sharing. So the first strategy is time management with intention. And so, time management is one of those most valuable assets that a leader can possess. It's not just about doing more, but it's about doing what matters with intention and being clear on that. And so in the roles, maybe, the need to juggle client meetings or employer partnerships, documentation, maybe, other demands that require strong time management. So plan priorities and not just tasks. Know what the priorities are. When I worked in higher ed previously, I worked for a former he was a state representative at the time. And our department was one that focused on business and industry, public school partnerships, and community education. So we had 3 of the top performing programs within that organization. And he was gone during the legislative session. And so he would call in and he would just fire out all of the priorities, and they all were priorities. And I was early in my career, and the leader that I am today is not the leader that I was then. It wasn't until 2013 that I really, was introduced to leadership training. And so I learned that I needed to speak up. And if you're an introvert like I am, you may find that hard to do. And so I had to speak up and ask, okay, out of these 10 items, these 10 tasks, can you tell me what the priority is? So plan priorities, not just tasks. There was a time that I would just have those low-hanging fruit called tasks just to appear to have gotten something checked off of my list. I was all over the place. Use time blocks for focus, whatever that looks like for you. Time blocking that protects high priority tasks. So between 10 and 3, that's my high focus time. So if I'm working on a strategic plan or if I'm responding to an RFP, whatever that means, if I'm researching and I need some focus time, between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock or 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock is my best time. So determine what that is for you. And then build transition time into your day. So even though you plan, life happens, the unexpected happens. And so you want to build in some transition time, build in some buffer time, maybe conduct weekly planning or daily reviews. And as much as you may love multitasking, you want to limit multitasking so that you can reduce errors and mental fatigue. I used to think that I was the queen of multitasking until I realized that I had so many unfinished tasks because in my mind, I could multitask, but there were times when there were so many unfinished projects and tasks. So having a singular focus will definitely help. And if you've not ever done a time audit of your day, I highly encourage you to do that. This will help you determine where you currently spend your time and where you need or should spend it or redistribute that time. And have tools. So I've used Trello since 2017 to organize projects and tasks. There was a time where I was the sticky note person. I had sticky notes everywhere. And if that's your system and it works, that's fine. But using technology definitely helps. So with Trello, it's a project management. I'm a visual learner, so I use Trello for project management. You can color code, you can have, naming conventions for your projects. And underneath you have those different tasks. And then I enter about 3 to 5 tasks per day into my Google Calendar. And so that's my system. But I encourage you, if you don't have a system for managing your time, managing projects and tasks, that you develop one. You just want to start somewhere. If you're already overwhelmed, be intentional about setting aside some time, maybe today or Friday, maybe a time when you're not as busy, to just prioritize. Now, if I'm intentional, I'm likely to accomplish it. For example, and with the new year, a lot of people set New Year's resolutions. I generally have a theme word. So for 2026, my theme word is WIN, and it's an acronym where I focus on 3 F's: faith, family, finance. And under family is health and well-being. So my goal is to get in 10,000 steps every single day. Well, last week I was able to accomplish that, and I'm going to count that as a win. I will say, though, that for self-care, well-being, and supporting my daughter, I was in Florida last week, and she had a cheer competition at nationals. And with that, we were at Disney. So I got in 13,000 steps and 15,000 steps every single day. Now, I plan to be intentional about that and continue the same now that I am back home. So yes, the tool is Trello. Yes, Chad, thank you for putting that in the chat. There are so many: Asana, Slack, those are some other time management, project management, and then Microsoft. Microsoft Project is another. So if you use Microsoft, but you want to find something that works for you and that you'll stick with. The goal is to get started. And then simple prioritization tools. You can use the 3D method. If you are undecided about what to do, when to do it, delegate it, defer it. Sometimes it can be a challenge delegating and then deferring that to someone else. It's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a leadership strength when you delegate. A former role that I served in as Director of Workforce and Community Education, One unique thing about me in that position is that I had held every position that I supervised. And so I had a challenge with delegating because I had performed the role of the administrative secretary, the um, community education coordinator. And so I had to learn that there was more than one way and to relinquish that control. And so you do it, delegate, defer. If you're having a hard time figure out what it is that you should focus on, what do you have on your plate that no one else can do? That's what you focus on. What do you have on your list that someone else can take care of? That's what you delegate. And then those other minute tasks that aren't necessarily priorities, you defer it. Maybe organizing your OneNote, organizing your Google Drive. Those are things that you can defer until you have focus on your priorities. All right, I'd like to know, how often do you feel in control of your schedule? How often do you feel in control of it? A, always, B, sometimes, C, rarely, or D, never. How often do you feel in control of your schedule? Let's see. Okay, A, B, 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 sometimes. Between A and B, okay. All right, I see a lot of B's. Haven't seen any. A few C's, rarely. Okay, between A and B. I don't think I've seen any D's. So that's great. So, your schedule sometimes can be dictated by the tasks that are delegated or routine things, but this really helps us to reflect on how much of our time is, proactive versus reactive. So think about meetings, and that brings us to strategy number 2, effective meeting facilitation. Do you ever feel this way? Let me know in the chat. Do you ever feel like you get a meeting? You get a meeting. You get a meeting. Do you ever feel that way? You get a meeting. So strategy number 2 is effective meeting facilitation. Sometimes, absolutely. Okay. Um, Good. Another point here, I get out of a lot of meetings thinking that could have been handled via email. Yeah, nonstop meetings, always, and most are pointless. So think about, in terms of setting meetings, they should have purpose, use clear agendas, and then end with action steps so everyone, is on the right page, so to speak. That helps to reduce unnecessary attendance. And meetings can be one of the biggest sources of fatigue because without structure, it may seem like a waste of time. It may drain energy. And so you can reclaim time by tightening that a bit, determining whether you need to have a meeting or if the topics can be discussed via email. And so, again, set and share clear agendas ahead of time, preferably with time limits for each. And then assign roles. So maybe there's a facilitator, a note taker, a timekeeper. Start them on time. And I was at a leadership training that I led a few weeks ago, and one of the people said, if they're not 15 minutes early, then they're late. And so I asked, have you communicated that expectation? So as a leader, it's important. If your expectation is everyone should be present at 8:45 for a 9 o'clock meeting, you want to make that expectation known or not hold them accountable for not being there based on your expectation, right? If you would prefer that your staff show up to teams 5 minutes early, make that expectation known so they'll be aware of that. And when it comes to voting, maybe use consensus voting, and then close meeting with clear next steps and assign responsibilities. Now let's take a look at this meeting reset checklist. So ask before scheduling, is this necessary? Can this be an email or shared document? What decision must be made? This will help you to determine if a meeting should earn a place on the calendar. And then technology and systems. So this definitely helps to reduce that mental load by having systems. You don't want to solely rely on memory, because if you're like me, once I fall asleep, who knows what I remember, right? Systems, workflows, automation, it helps with succession planning as well. And so you want to constantly identify those individuals that you're developing, that talent pipeline. And so that's a key skill in leadership. And if someone should leave a position, if they should retire, unfortunately pass away, you have the systems in place, you have the workflow so the organization can continue to run smoothly. In a former position that I held, there wasn't a lot of turnover, but there wasn't any guidance either. So if you've ever, been hired in a position and you're like, what do I do? Having standard operating procedures, having systems, having workflows, automate reminders. If there are documents that go out on a schedule, even, use shared calendars and task tools, create repeatable systems, create steps for those systems. For example, if you're in charge of file monitoring, think about what that process looks like, every step. If you don't have standard operating procedures, I highly encourage you to create some. Again, so that if you're out of the office, if someone else is filling in, then it's not about how Ophelia does things versus how Susie does things. It's following that system, following that flow. So what does that look like for you? When it comes to creating workflows, you can use Excel and just list out. You can use Google Documents. You can use Scribe. That's a extension that you can add, SCRIBE, Scribe, for creating standard operating procedures. Again, or you can just document that and be intentional about creating that. It definitely helps. Use project management tools. I mentioned Trello, Asana, Microsoft Planner. Automate those repetitive tasks. I love autoresponders that are sent out. So, whatever that is, creating templates for frequent communications and reports. Those are ways that you can utilize technology and systems and ensure that things run smoothly and continue to run seamlessly, even when you're not around. What tool would most reduce your overwhelm? A, better calendar planning. B, meeting structure. C, delegation systems. Or D, self-care routines. What tool would most reduce your overwhelm? Let me hear from you. Oh, I see. Okay, B, A, D, A, D, and C. I think A. Okay, A, D, C, B. All right. Balance again, as I mentioned, it's personal. Some days it may be 50-50, some days it may be 90-10, 70-30, but it's personal. Different tools support different needs as well. So, use what works best for you. E, control over others' schedule my time without my input. Okay. All right. Thanks for adding that. I like to continue on with this leadership balance out audit. So we'll take about 3 minutes, a minute each. And I like for you to do a quick audit. This will help you to identify what needs adjustment, maybe, some small shifts to create some change that will be meaningful. So I like for you to write down one leadership responsibility draining your energy, one responsibility that energizes you, and then one system or boundary you can implement this week. So we'll take 3 minutes for this audit. So I'll pause and then I'll let you know when your time is up. All right. Hopefully you've had some time. If not, this is something that I encourage you to continue on with after this webinar. If you'd like to share, feel free to type in the chat. Also, this will help you to kind of stay accountable if you want to share it with a colleague and self-reflect. Okay, so staffing, time serving client needs, self-care. Putting out other leaders' fires, seeing people get to the finish line, not being as available, and using the word no more. Yes. That was a hard one for me, Shannon, using the word no. Sometimes no doesn't mean never. It may just mean not right now. I'm going to check my priorities first before I agree. Okay. Thank you all for sharing. Again, if you need some more time to continue reflecting, feel free to continue on after today's webinar. Self-care as a leadership practice. Leadership and well-being, it's not separate from, or self-care and well-being is not separate from leadership. It's definitely a strength. It shows that you're being responsible, that you are being intentional about showing up as your best possible self. You may be the person that works beyond office hours and you don't balance that with the equal amount of time off. Been there, done that. You may carry, emotional weight of your clients, challenges of your team, based on some of the responses in the comments. I can see that that's the case. Maintaining boundaries is critical for longevity and satisfaction. So, rest is strategic. You want to be mindful of prioritizing rest. Wellness, it improves decision making. It helps you with that mental focus that you need to make those decisions. And then modeling balance, it gives teams permission to do the same. Again, if you've heard that attitudes are contagious, so is the energy that you give. And, self-care, well-being. So self-care is the action that you take. Well-being is the result of that. And so, set and communicate clear work boundaries as a strategy. Now, you do want to follow your company's policies and procedures, but what I do when I check my business email is 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, close of business. Because if you constantly watch your inbox, that can prevent you from completing some other priority tasks. Again, you want to follow your company's policies, but for me, in my business email, morning, midday, afternoon, or before the day ends. And at each checkpoint, I determine what's priority. If there's something that needs attention, then if not, I'll move it to the next time slot or to the next day. Schedule non-negotiables, your breaks, your meals, outside of work, your family time, just like you would a meeting. Those 10K plus steps, I'm going to be more intentional about scheduling those in. And then someone said saying no. So practice saying no or delegating tasks that fall outside of your scope. And no doesn't always mean never, as I mentioned. It may mean that you're going to first consider your priorities before you agree to others, people's needs. And then regularly review and adjust your workload based on capacity. And then you want to do that for your team as well. And so that leads us to the REST framework that I like to share. The R is for reflect upon your well-being. E, evaluate your processes. So what do you currently do? What's causing your stress? Solidify your plan. You definitely want to have a plan. And then teach others your techniques. And so this REST framework, it's based on the self-determination theory of Deci and Ryan, where it focuses on, control over choices, connecting with others. So that sharing piece of that. And sustainable habits, leaders can start today. So what can you do today? These are just some ideas. You may have your own. Acknowledge stress and seek support. Prioritizing self-care. And if you didn't know, leadership begins with leading yourself. And self-care isn't a luxury, it's a leadership responsibility. So the goal is sustainability. And if you need to start small, start somewhere. 10-minute daily reset, protected focus blocks. I think the fourth bullet point is my favorite. No meeting time windows. So if you have that autonomy, I generally don't like scheduling meetings between 8 and 10 o'clock. Generally, sometimes I bend. Weekly reflection check-ins, and then build a daily or weekly self-care. Build daily or weekly self-care, whatever that looks like for you. I have 30 minutes of quiet time every day when my children get home. Although I work from home independently, I still have that quiet time. That's a part of my self-care and well-being. So I'd like for you to think, a leadership self-care plan, and we'll take just a few minutes to reflect. This is definitely something that I want to encourage you to do afterwards in more detail, but create a leadership self-care plan. This is going to include daily, weekly, and monthly practices. They can be no cost or low cost. One of my items on my list is quarterly trips. Now, it may be for business purposes, so I may extend my stay for self-care. whatever that looks like for you. Or it could be sitting quietly 30 minutes per day. Could be taking walks, a hobby. I can't wait to go camping. Whatever that looks like for you. So those who are intentional generally are more successful with executing their leadership plan. And I always encourage individuals, and I want to encourage you to do the same. Apply the SMART principle to your plan. If you're not familiar with the SMART framework, it's ensuring that your plan is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. As I cleaned out my office last week, I found notebooks of goals that had not been accomplished. And it's because I was not intentional about that. I didn't apply the SMART principle to those goals, so they still sit there in the notebook. So because we are almost at time, we'll just take just a few minutes. And I'd like for you to share, something that you currently do for self-care. What do you currently do for self-care? Type in the chat. What do you currently do for self-care? What do you currently do for self-care? Daily walks in the morning, read books, audiobooks, exercise, get my hair colored. All right. Read books, read music, go to the gym, work out 3 times a day, 3 times a week. Excuse me. It's not lame at all, tracking calories so that I don't mindlessly eat throughout the day. Yes. Whatever works for you. I send dad jokes to my team. They laugh, so I laugh. All right. Gym, nails, and reading. Great. I take 35 minutes in the morning to just breathe. Cup of coffee or 2. Think about nothing important. Love it. I did that last week. As I mentioned, here in South Arkansas, we had ice and we were shut down for about a whole week. But there was one day that the sun shined so brightly that it was just a very zen moment that I stood out with my coffee and did just what Mark stated. I thought about nothing important. Puzzles. All right. So as we're wrapping up today, I want you to ask yourself, what is one thing I will implement this week? How will I protect my well-being as I lead others? Think about that. If you'd like to type in the chat, feel free. You may need some time. I'm a process thinker. You may need some time to process what that looks like for you, but I highly encourage you to do that. And I want to leave you with a reminder that burnout, it's not a personal failure. It's often a sign of, sustained overextension in this high impact field that you're in, and then supporting it really requires systems, practice, and being intentional about self-care and well-being so that you can show up as the leader that you are. Thank you all so much for joining the webinar today on balancing well-being and leadership. Hopefully there's something that you heard or read that was a great reminder for you. And if you have any questions, feel free if you'd like to come off mute or type in the chat. Questions or comments? And then I'll turn it back over to Donna. You're welcome.
Well, Ophelia, I just want to say thank you for joining us today and providing us some realistic things that we can do to just make leading others easier. I know I was reminded of some things that I can certainly do. Some other things that I learned is that we have a lot of mod members who are readers. So maybe at this year's mod conference, we just need to have a little get together with all the fellow bookworms. I don't know, maybe I can get that implemented. Since I did mention the mod conference, quick plug. Our conference is coming up in April. It is, let me make sure I get the dates right here. It's been kind of a whirlwind, but it's going to be April 29th through May 1st. That's Wednesday through Friday. We'll be hosting this year's conference at the University Plaza in Springfield, Missouri. Our early bird pricing has been extended through February 15th. So if you're with an organization that still is looking to register, get those registrations in before that time frame. And also, yeah, really am going to have to do something about our fellow bookworms. So stay tuned for that. So thank you all for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you later in April. Thanks again, Ophelia, for joining us.